Chapter 5. What a fucking shithole of a planet. No open water, no real laws or order. I see why the Federation nixed it. No one would travel here for any good reason. If the Drazian came here to hide, it would be punishment enough to leave him here to rot. Valeris Owan paced the square nervously, blending in with the traditional tan robes worn by observers. He was young, looked to be around 20 years old, kept his hair short and neat. Hidden beneath his robes were a well-built, muscular body. He spent all his free time exercising and working out. A relatively new observer, Valeris was on his third assignment. The other two had been exciting missions on civilized planets with plenty of women. This one sucked. He served under Arkeber Gaidi, who had 3 observers, which he sent to possible planets that the Drazian could have fled to. "Observer," said a well-dressed man, approaching hastily. "Marcus. Are you going to tell me why I'm here?" replied Valeris. "I just received word from my people that there is indeed a Drazian here. Some bloodcloaks sent out an emergency transmission to us. Relg stalkers have already been dispatched and are on the hunt," relayed the man. "Relg? They're here already? Well, then why do you need me?" "I need you to find him and take him back to Gala. The Relg's primary mission is to drive him into the gate. Secondary is to kill. You need to be there to open that gate. Here is your return scroll. The gate on the other side is already open. You just need to activate the gate from this side." "You want me to bring the Drazian to a federated planet? Why? I thought they wanted them all dead." "Not this one. Turns out he was one of Drasus's. They need him alive to try and figure out how to use the Drazian gate system." "They're going to try inhibiting him," said the observer, intrigued. "Yeah, they want to make him like a Relg, a Drazian slave. Wouldn't that be a fun pet? Oh, and by the way, you get the full reward for capturing him." "I swear the oath. If an archiver finds out that I sold out to the Federation, there'll be hell to pay. What guarantees do I have to make sure they don't find out?" Don't you worry about Arkeber Gaidi. He's a sensible man. I just expect that you might need to make an additional payment, and then we'll all stay quiet." "What's the reward?" 100,000 federal credits. Valeris thought about the deal. It was a no-brainer. He didn't care about his oath or Drazians. He thought about the glory of capturing a Drazian, the money, and the chicks he would pick up. Sure, he'd probably be kicked out of the archives, but that wouldn't be too bad. He hated the work, the rules, and always feeling like an idiot among his peers. The only reason he did it was because his father had a connection with Arkeber Gaidi, who took him in as an observer. In the relative scheme of the universe, the observers were relatively high in ranking and privilege. "All right, I'll get him through the portal. The Federation will be on the other side?" The man chuckled. "Everyone will be there. This is a highly publicized event. The capture of one of the last Drazians. The gate is just outside Dreg, a 5-hour ride. Once I find him, I'll convince him to come." "One last thing, Valeris. Do not engage the Relg. They aren't used to these types of missions." The man handed over a rolled-up piece of paper to the observer. The observer took it and placed it in his robes. "Good luck," he said as he walked away. "All right, now how am I going to find this Drazian?" The observer left the square and walked onto the main street. Suddenly, a heavily bearded man came up to him, panting and out of breath. "Are you the observer?" "Yes, I am," Valeris mocked. "Who is asking?" "Come with me. You're needed at the miner's pit," stated the drunk, finally regaining his breath. The observer almost pushed the guy aside and kept going, but was intrigued. No one ever called on him. Most of these dumb fucks here had no idea who he was. Also, the miner's pit was one of the best bars here and stood out as being one of the few clean and normal places left on this planet. In any case, he would be able to ask around there whether anyone had seen a tall man with bright white hair and double-ringed eyes walking around town. When Uli returned to the makeshift camp, he found Kavar practicing throws with his boomerang. The clouds were thick today, and the desert temperatures were manageable. "Getting the hang of it?" asked Uli. A dozen small mounds stood out in front of Kvar. "You be the judge," replied Kvar. He pulled out his boomerang and threw it straight into the air. It spun in circles, hovering over his head. In the blink of an eye, the boomerang zoomed off and swooped low. It plowed through the first sand mound, slicing off the top chunk, then proceeded and even picked up speed, flying straight into the next mound. The boomerang then pulled up and zigzagged from mound to mound at full speed. After striking the last mound, it returned to a spot high above Kvar's head and spun silently. Uli was stunned. "So you can just keep it hovering and spinning up there?" "It doesn't take much energy. I just have to have conscious control of it. I'm still figuring it out." "So did you find a way out of here?" asked Kvar. "I met with an old acquaintance. He told me about a gate that we could use." Kvar's eyes widened at the word. "You know where the other gate is?" "That's how you got here, isn't it? Gate travel?" asked Uli. "Yeah, but the gate I came through caved in afterwards. Do you know what kind of gate it is? Gunthian? Heiligen? Drazian?" "What's the difference?" Sirak asked. "Gunthian and Heiligen gates are ancient and require the use of scrolls. Drazian gates don't matter as much since they don't work anymore. Gunthian and Heiligen gates are technical masterpieces, more mechanical than Drazian gates. The scrolls are really just a piece of paper printed out with a specific sequence that must be entered to open your side. The main difference between the two gates is that a Gunthian gate accepts both Gunthian and Heiligen sequences. With Heiligen sequences, both transmitting and receiver portals need to be open for passageway. A Gunthian sequence can fully open a portal to another Gunthian gate. The Federation controls most Heiligen gates, allowing them to determine who travels through them. It is damn near impossible to travel through a non-watched gate. This is all what I've been taught. Not sure if it's all accurate. I've only ever been through one gate." "So you think we should go for it? The gate?" "There's an observer here who may be able to operate it," stated Uli. He looked at Kvar, who stared past him with a look of dread. Uli turned around and searched the desert. Way off in the distance, 3 red figures stood out against the bleak sand. He stared for a moment longer, then ran to his speeder. The Drazian was already mounted on his. In a burst of sand, they were off towards Dreg. After a half-hour's ride, they reached the bedrock of Dreg and ditched their speeders in a shanty. Throwing a canvas over his speeder, Uli looked up. "We don't have time to fashion the disguise for you. We're just going to have to make a run for the miner's pit. God, I hope the old man did his job." "How about this for a disguise?" answered Kvar. He had found and put on an old, leather mining helmet, complete with a glow light. He tampered with it for a few seconds, and it began to emit its eerie blue light. Then he reached into a box and pulled out some metalworking goggles. He polished the dust off and put them on and went outside. "My God, these goggles are fucking amazing. All this damn brightness, it's gone. This is the best thing I've ever found on this planet," Kvar said, the biggest smile on his face. "That's not too bad for a disguise. Now just cut your height down a foot or two and you would actually blend in. All right, let's go. Those Relg are probably only an hour or two behind us," said Uli, turning to leave. They went out into the street. Uli spotted a cart runner and beckoned him over. 2 people to the miner's pit. Full speed, Uli stated. "That'll be 70 taeli," replied the runner with his hand out. Uli dug into his wallet and pocket, but couldn't find any small change. Somewhat reluctantly, he pulled out a 50-credit bricklet and handed it to the runner. The runner gave Uli a glare. "You expect me to make change for this? I don't make this in 2 months." "It's all yours. Just get us there as fast as possible. No more questions," Uli replied. The runner looked down and up, then down and up again. He shoved the bricklet into his shirt and ran to the wagon part of the cart, grabbing 2 posts. Kvar approached him and whispered something to the man, who then nodded. The runner gave a loud whistle and stuck 1 post in the front corner of the cart, then 2 short whistles as he hammered the second post into the left corner. 2 more runners appeared from the alleyway and ran over to the main runner. After a few seconds of chatter, all 3 manned a post, and the cart was moving at a speed Uli had never seen before. Onlookers gazed with astonishment as the cart scurried by. In 10 quick and bumpy minutes, the cart stopped. "This isn't the miner's pit," yelled Uli. "It's okay. I needed to make a quick stop," said Kvar as he dismounted. "Uli, give me a bundle of credits. 200 should do." The Styrak somewhat reluctantly tossed him a year's salary. They wouldn't be any use off of Khaldun. He watched Kvar approach the nearby house and knock. A bearded man cautiously opened the door. Uli recognized the man as a traveling trader who had recently passed through Gunnith. Kvar handed him the money, and the man passed him an object. As Kvar came back, Uli saw that he was holding a sheathed dagger in his hand. "Geez, Kvar, I need to give you a lesson in Khaldunian currency," exclaimed Uli, wondering how many of his ropes had been spent on a stupid dagger. Kvar simply grinned and hopped back in the cart, motioning to move on. The runners took off again, and after 7 minutes, they arrived at the lower cart system of the miner's pit. The main runner gave a coin to his companion on the right, who ran off ahead to the carts. "Complimentary cart ride, kind sir," explained the main runner. "Thanks for the haste," Uli replied and dismounted. The runner tossed an odd glance towards Kvar, dressed in his miner's helmet and goggles, then tended to his cart. Kvar and Uli rushed into the loading bay and found a cart waiting for them. They hopped in the miner's cart, which contained 2 makeshift benches. Before they had even sat down, the cart took off, getting pulled upwards towards the main lounge of the miner's pit. The ride lasted 5 minutes. Kvar ducked once to avoid a low ceiling beam, but wasn't so lucky with the hanging light. "This helmet's got more than one use, I see," he muttered, rubbing his head. At last the cart came to an abrupt halt, and they walked out of the loading bay and into a large atrium that turned out to be the central lounge. Uli noticed that men had once again filled up the bar and were at the tables playing cards. His gaze was fixed to a corner table near the bar. There sat the old man and the observer. Uli could tell by his signature tan robes. "An observer? You didn't tell me there was an observer," said Kvar. "Sure I did, back at the camp." "Why? You don't trust them? They're oath-bound. I've never heard of one breaking their oath." "It's not that I don't trust them. I know an archiver's word is good. It's just that these are strange times," replied Kvar. "Well, let's go introduce ourselves. The Relic March." The old man had just finished explaining the situation to Phalaris. The room got a little quieter, and Phalaris turned towards the gasps and saw a 7-foot giant walking towards him, wearing a helmet, miner shirt, and welding goggles. A greaser miner stood up and blocked Kvar's path. Kvar stood a foot taller, but the man was unfazed. "Get out of my fucking way," growled Kvar. "No gear inside the bar, and that means you. We is a civilized people here," said the miner, with a toothless grin. Kvar stooped down until he was level with the miner. A few other men got up. Kvar reached up and pulled off his miner's helmet. Eyes opened wide when the bright white hair was revealed. He then reached his hand to his face and pushed the goggles up to his hair. His gold double-ring eyes stared out at the goon in front of him. "Motherfucking hell, what is that?" the miner managed to get out. "A Drazian," someone yelled. Murmurs spilt throughout the room. Phalaris stood up and shouted, "This man is with me. Let him pass." "Oh yeah? You just want the reward money all for yourself," rebutted a man wearing a red miner's suit. "Reward?" shouted another. 500,000 federal credits for the capture or killing of a Drazian, he answered. The place erupted in commotion, and everyone began speaking to each other, trying to process what they had just heard. The observer tried to quiet the crowd and tell them that there was no such reward, but the beefy miner blocking Kvar's path wasn't listening and lunged forward, pinning Kvar to the ground. The miner reached for his belt knife, when suddenly a long dagger entered the man's temple and protruded out the other side. He crumpled and fell on Kvar, who shook him off. The Drazian looked up to see Uli wrenching the blade from the man's skull. Everyone backed off a few steps, wary of Uli. Then there was a crash. A bottle struck Uli in the back of the head, and he fell like a tree on the dead corpse. Kvar looked at the barfolk, then raised his hand into the air. There was a blur, followed by the sound of chopping air. The man with his hand on Kvar's shoulder froze. Dark blood dripped from his chin, rivulets rolling down his cheeks and nose up to the forehead, where the boomerang was half sunk into the man's skull. He fell with a loud thud. Kvar quickly grabbed the boomerang on the curved edge and pulled it out, and with full force, swung the sharp inner edge at the next man's neck. It sliced straight through, like butter. The bearded miner's head began to roll backwards. The barful converged, while Kvar threw his boomerang, going into deep concentration. It bounced and zagged from person to person, head to head, although every now and then it switched target areas and found the soft flesh guarding the heart, and once struck the spine of a fleeing miner who fell instantly to the ground, unable to move. The boomerang returned to Kvar before the bearded miner's head hit the ground. He wiped the blood off his weapon on the still-standing, headless corpse, then let it fall. He tucked the boomerang into the back holster Uli had fashioned, and turned to the observer. 12 corpses lay in the room, spilling blood in various directions and onto the rock floor. The rest of the patrons, who having remained in their seats, turned cautiously back to their drinks and resumed nervous conversations. "It works," Kvar said as he approached Valeris and the old man. The observer tried to control his breathing and heart rate, both unsuccessful. "Whew, that was quite an impressive show of force. I'm Valeris, observer." "Under which archiver do you serve?" asked Kvar. "Archiver Gaiti," he answered, slightly puzzled. "Do you know any archivers?" "I've met one," the Drazian responded. "You have? Who?" "I'll be most interested in hearing another time, perhaps," Kvar said. "Do you know my situation?" He then glanced at the old man. "Yes, he has filled me in. You wish to get off this shithole. Well, you're in luck. I'm more than happy to help. I despise this planet and would be delighted to get off it. I was sent here for you, after all," replied the observer. Kvar gave Valeris a suspicious look. "You were? And with what intentions?" Valeris pulled out a scroll. "Well, I have a scroll to the gate near Archive Headquarters, System EP08. The archives would like to get your memories of Drazia recorded for the history books. After that, you can do whatever you like. After all, the archives are not bound to the Federation." Kvar snatched the scroll out of his hands and looked at the gibberish and strange markings, flipped it over to the blank side, then handed it back. "All right, rug stalkers are on their way. They may have reached the city by now. We need to move," Kvar pressed. The old man and observer started to lead the way out of the room, stepping over the bodies and carefully dodging puddles of blood. "And what about him?" gestured the old man to the unconscious Uli. "Leave him. He will only slow us down," stated the observer. Kvar went up to Uli and emptied the nearest drink on his face. He began to groan and moved his head. "Oh, what's happening?" he asked, dazed. "You coming? Are you going to spend the rest of your days here?" Kvar asked. Uli quickly snapped out of it and recovered enough strength to stand. His eyes widened as he took in the bloodshed. Then they shifted their gaze to the boomerang. "Well, it works," Kvar said with a half grin, then moved towards the door. They took the minecarts down to the ground level and were pleased to see that the runners had waited. The observer gave instructions to the cart runner, and in a matter of seconds, the four of them squeezed into a two-person cart and were off.